Hi, it's Jo from Minerva. Today I'm going to do a sew along of the Sewing Workshop Picasso trousers. They have a lantern hem and elastic waist, and I'm going to use 100% Ramie fabric. The Picasso trousers have an elastic waist, so you can see here it's comfortable around the back, but then to stop them looking all bulky around the front part of the waistband is flat without elastic in. Then an elastic starts here and here, which gives a flatter front, and there's also pleats here on each side. This is a 12 pair that I made, hence they're not pattern matching, but I just wanted to get the fit right round the waist and to work out how to put the hem on. The pattern comes from extra small to XXL, which covers size 6 to 22. It is an American pattern, so you'll need to check your measurements against the pattern. If you're familiar with using the Big 4 patterns, that's how the Sewing Workshop instructions are laid out, and a similar sort of layout to Big 4 patterns. So if you're used to using those, although this is an indie pattern, you won't be fazed by the instructions. The fabric that I'm using today is 100% Ramie, which is similar to a linen. It's a plant-based fabric, and it's all about the texture. So it's it comes quite smooth, and then this has been washed. So I washed this on a 40-degree cycle because I know that's what I'm going to wash casual trousers on. And then what came out of the machine was this really beautifully textured fabric, and it did shrink a little bit, so you definitely need to wash this. It comes in a huge range of colours. I've chosen grey because I want to wear it with lots of my hand knit jumpers, and I want lots of things to go with it. So I'm going to start making the Picasso pants. Before I cut this beautiful fabric, I've got my pieces ready, but before I cut them, I did make some alterations to the pattern pieces, which I'm going to show you now at the cutting table. A few words on fitting before you cut out the Sewing Workshop Picasso pants. It's got what looks to me a very deep crotch there, and this is the back piece, and so I want to measure before I cut out my trousers, because this happens to me a lot because I'm short-waisted. I want to know what depth the back will be from my waistband round to the centre crotch. So I've folded the waistband piece in half. I've overlapped it by the seam allowance. I'm just going to put a pattern weight on there. And then I'm going to measure just roughly, but I know this is going to be way too big for me. I'm just going to measure roughly the crotch seam. So it's coming out at 16 inches, but when I measure that on my jeans waistband, I only need 15. So I'm an inch over here, so I need to pinch an inch out of this body. So I don't want to do it where the curve is, I want to do it here where the straight pieces are. Some patterns have a lengthen and a shorten line on them. This one doesn't have one for the body, it does have one in another place, which I'm going to show you next. So I want to pinch out an inch, okay, and that is going to be my new back crotch, so it shouldn't pull right up way past where my jeans would normally go or my trousers would normally go. I have to do this alteration a lot. So I'm just checking on myself. Perfect. So once you've put your shorten the crotch fold in here, then we're going to need to do the same in the side panel. So the notches still match up here. I've taken the inch out and the waistband remaining piece of fabric still matches too. When taking some out of the front panel, you need to make sure again you're using your side panel, matching up the notches. The ends are here. Make sure you don't interfere when you do this alteration with any other pattern marking. So I've got a pleat mark here that makes a little inverted pleat on the front, and I don't want my fold to start getting involved with that. So I need to make sure that the alteration I make doesn't cause a problem in another area. The other part of the paper pattern that you might need to alter for your size is the length. So these trousers are called lantern trousers, and they come round in that scoop shape at the bottom. And on the pattern piece, you will see that the hem goes round, and then there's this hem allowance here that folds up. So if you put these trousers on at the end, you can't just change the length of them by just chopping a bit off, because you'll lose the lantern shape. So your last paper alteration is to measure your inside leg and then check it against from crotch to hem where you would like it. So do you want it as a cropped one for summer, or would you like to wear it with boots and thick socks in the winter? So then you'd want it a little bit longer. Measure that and make sure that you've got the right length. And then if you need to lengthen it, cut that line and split the pattern, or cut that line and overlap the pattern, and then you'll have the right length before you start, because you cannot change the hem length of these trousers once they're made, because you will lose the lantern shape. Of course, you will have put all of your notch markings and dots and pattern markings onto your fabric with a chalk, or if you put a little snip, or whatever technique that you use. And you need to do that because step one is to add the knife pleats on the front. When working with this fabric, because both sides are exactly the same, I mean, there really is no difference between the right side and the wrong side. I'm using chalk as all my markings, so that I know the wrong side is the side that I've chalked. I also chalked the notches instead of snipping them, because if I snip them, then, oh, there's the notch. If I snip them, then I can't tell if it's the right side or the wrong side. So I've gone for chalk because the right side and the wrong side are the same colour and texture. So the first thing you need to do is to bring up the two dots on the knife pleat and pin them. And then you're going to sew from the top to the bottom. It's not the same as making a dart. You don't need to do a sort of grade out at the end of this. You do just stop and forwards and back. So you're going to forwards and back at the beginning, forwards and back at the end, and then you will get a knife pleat. This fabric doesn't fray as quickly as linen. It's a little bit more stable, which makes it quite nice to work with. So once you've made your pleat, you've sewn here, then you're going to press that pleat away to the side seam, not towards the crotch. You're going to press it away towards the side seam. It does take some pressing, this fabric. You need a really quite hot iron. A warm iron will not get that crispness. Next part of the trouser is to add the hem panel. Now this is where you've got to check your right side. So this is the right side, because here's my right side of my pleat, and I want to make sure that I'm going to be getting the right side of my hem panel with the right side of my pleat. When I made this toile, I made them up and I had this seam on the outside and this pleat on the inside, so I had them opposite. So just make sure, if you're using a fabric that's not an obvious right or wrong side, that you match the notches so that you get the curves in the right place and you have the seam on the inside. I know I have now because I've got my chalk notch here so that I know all my chalk will be on the inside. You must press this pattern as you're working with it because there are extra seam lines, side seam and these hem seams, and these are all going to be top stitched, so you must press as you go along because otherwise your top stitching won't make those final design lines when you put your trousers together. And then we're going to repeat for the other front panel. Mistakes in sewing are good, but I don't want to repeat them, so when I made this toile pair I made 2 left fronts, so I want to make sure that I've got my pleats on the front and the front crotch pieces, and I want to make sure that I have my notches matching, and that the hem seams are opposite too. So let's check. I'm double checking. Those are on the outside, those are on the outside, and that's the crotch seam. Next we're going to add the side panels to the front panel, and you need to be a little bit careful here as well, and this is where you really need your notches, because although this looks symmetrical, it isn't. One of these is slightly more curved, so you need to make sure that the notches on this, you're putting the right side onto the front side. It should work because you've got right sides together, but just keep double checking. The notches are really important in this pattern to make sure that you get that lantern hem shape. You also need to make sure that where the hemline is, you match that up perfectly, because in a later stage you're going to top stitch around there. So if those two seams don't match up, then your top stitching won't be able to run in a straight line. So just if there's any little bit of easing in to do, make sure that your hemline seam here is lined up with the side seam one. Match up your other notches and then you're ready to sew the side panels. And I'm going to put a little split down here because when I turn the hem up, I want that to be able to turn up and kink in. You might need to just actually cut a little bit of that out, but I just need to make sure that that will turn up onto the inside. It's time to move on to the next part. When you've added the side panels, you need to press both parts of the seam allowance to the side panel, and that's a specific instruction because when you come to top sew, you want to be top sewing all of those layers together. So don't split the seam and iron it over to the side panel. After adding the lantern hem bottoms to the back, you then need to find right sides together and attach your side panel to the back panel, again being really careful about matching up that seam there, that lantern seam, because that's the one we're going to top stitch in a moment, so we need to make sure that those are absolutely together. Okay, we have a whole leg unit here, so there is the front, that's the one with the knife pleat on, the side panel in the middle and the back crotch, and that's going to be folded in half in a moment. But first of all, we're going to add the top stitching detail around this lantern hem, and you can see how it's a slightly curved shape, so you make sure you've pressed it all in the same direction as the pattern, and you're going to edge stitch it. It's up to you, but you can edge stitch these as well to show the design lines. I'm going to do that on here because it's a plain fabric, but you need to be going really, really slow so that you can make sure that you're getting, here look, you're getting a line across here and a line down here, and your top stitching is really accurate. You should get on that cross section there, you should get your top stitch that's going down the side seam, and then your one that's going across. You get a nice cross, and then you need to sew the inside leg, and then we can think about attaching the two pieces together along the crotch seam. To press the inside leg seam, you might need to use a sleeve board or a sleeve ham, or because these are such wide leg trousers, you could get a normal ham inside the trouser to press the seam out. It's quite a bouncy fabric, it's very thick, and I think because you've top stitched the other seams down and made those so sophisticated, to have a sort of bubbly inside seam would be a shame. So make sure that you can get to press the inside leg seam. Right, so we're going to have one trouser wrong side out, one trouser right side out, and we're going to put them inside each other. So that on the crotch seam we can have right sides together. I've matched the crotch seam, pinned, hemmed and overlocked the crotch seam, and now I'm going to just snip it because I just want that to curve round nicely, and I want to press it as well so that I get a smooth rear seam and a nice flat front to complement the flat waistband at the front. Time to move on to the waistband. To construct the waistband, you need to make sure that you've added some dots for the size that you're making, because that is going to be the mark for where you stop the elastic. So it's important that that's on, that little dot there. Only takes a second. And then you're going to join the two pieces together. To make a seam, overlock that edge, and then we're going to press it in half along this length seam, so it will be half the width that it is. Okay, the waistband is joined along the short edge. There's a raw edge that's going to be attached to the waistband of your trousers, and the pattern asks you to finish the other edge. I've used an overlocker, but you can just zigzag along there, or if you want to, you can just turn one narrow hem. Remember that if you do that, you're going to be adding some bulk there, so it's best to zigzag if you can. The waistband now is going to be attached to the trousers, right sides together. So this centre waistband seam is the centre back seam. And then you're going to work this waistband all the way around the trousers. You might need to make some adjustments, like pull to ease the trouser or ease the waistband, but pin all of that on, and then you're going to sew the waistband to the trousers. Once the waistband is attached to the trousers, because you've already put the fold in, it will behave itself, and then you're going to pin the waistband down. Now you're going to be sewing from the right side, so make sure that you don't put the pins on the wrong side, because you're going to be sewing from this side. You're going to stitch in the ditch here, so you need to make sure that seam's really nicely pressed out so that you can get in under there, and then that will hold down your finished edge on the other side. If you've not done stitching the ditch before, you're aiming to get your needle to go in that sort of shaded gap that you can see, and you can peel it open a little bit, and you're going to have to go quite slowly because you don't really want it to show. I started at the left front. I've sewn all the way around, and the left front is where I'm going to leave the 2-inch opening for putting the elastic in. So I've got my stitch in the ditch all the way around. That's pretty darn good actually, can't see that at all. And then we've got this gap here where we can feed the elastic in. There is an elastic guide on the pattern, but I recommend that you measure it yourself. I'm using Prim standard elastic. It is 25mm wide, and there's enough for 2 pairs of trousers on this for me, so that's pretty good. And then, just like you would for a pair of pyjamas, you're going to put a safety pin on the end of your elastic and start feeding it through. Remember, this isn't the back, this is your left front where you start. Make sure it stays flat as you work it through, and just pin the end to make sure it doesn't scoot round, because it's not a very long piece of elastic, because it's only going round the back. So just pin it down to stop you losing it, and take that all the way back through to the beginning. And once you've taken the elastic all the way round, you're then going to do some top stitching here so that you keep that flat front band, so you go through the elastic as well. You need to make sure you haven't twisted your elastic, and just evenly distribute the elastic all the way around, especially as it's going to be quite a feature on the front. So make sure that you've got that sitting really well. I think this sort of demonstrates how firm the fabric is. It's quite thick. And then when you think you've got it evenly distributed, it doesn't say it on the pattern, but I like to do a little top stitch on the back seam as well, because it just stops the elastic rolling over or twisting when you're wearing them. And you use the centre back seam as a stitch in the ditch. And you can just go forwards and backwards there. Okay, time for the hems. The last thing to do is to hem around the bottoms of your trousers. So they're already being pressed up and pinned down. So just make sure that that's really nice and even, because that's part of your top stitching detail of the lantern hems. Here is the finished top of the trousers. So you can see you've got that flat front, and that goes directly over the knife pleats, the elasticated waist, the beautiful top stitching around the bottom, and that deep hem line that gives you that 1-inch hem that matches the rest of the top stitching. The back is fully elasticated, and you've got that crotch seam that you've pressed out and clipped so that it's not pulling or making a funny, there you go, that shows it. So it's got a really good curve on it. Superb trousers for travelling, going swimming, just whipping on and off. There we go. Those are the Picasso pants. They're a very relaxed style, sort of style you might wear on an aeroplane in a long car journey. I've tried to show you, I've made a summer pair. I made those shorter, so I wear those with pumps or sandals. And then the pair that I've made today, because of the thickness of the fabric and the density of it, I can wear these with boots and my socks and a chunky jumper, and I get a really different feel by using the Sewing Workshop Picasso pants pattern. Other fabrics you might like to use are linens. A gauze, like a double gauze, would make a summer pair. I would be careful of choosing a tartan because you've got all of those intersections to match. It would be the side panel, all of the lantern hem. So a ditzy print would be good, a small print, a small polka dot, something that hasn't got too large a print that you will keep cutting into when you have all of those different seam lines. A solid colour looks really good because you've got that top stitching that gives all of those design lines a definition. All the products that I've used are listed below, so you can choose the pattern and select a different fabric, or the fabric that I've used is there along with the elastic and the thread. But have a browse, have a look at this fabric and see what other people have made with it. There are jackets, there are skirts. It's quite a firm fabric, so it has a lot of different uses. Thank you for watching. I hope you might make some of those if that's your style of clothes, that relaxed fit. I'm going to make the Picasso top in another video, so if you'd like to see how to make that loose fitting top with a little bit of ease around the hemline, check out that video soon.